What's the nature of your emergency?
Welcome back to the Tactical Living Podcast. I'm your host, Ashley Wilton, joined by Sergeant Wilton. Clint, how are you?
I'm awesome.
It's a crazy thing to think about how much more time most people spend at work than they do at home with their own families.
Like, I can think of a few partners offhand that they're working all the time, and it's to me. Like you need to have a balance with anything and everything you do. And there's going to be times where you're busy and you have to work a lot. But if it's an ongoing thing, there's something definitely that you need to consider of what's going on.
Yeah. And I know from a lot of people that I've talked to, their shift partners know everything about them. They spend their holidays together. They celebrate, they mourn, they blow off steam together even. And something happens where a lot of the times when you're caught up in that loop, your entire workplace is your only social circle.
Yeah, and you need to have that separation, because I think if your social circle is only people at your work, then you don't have a separation between that work and home life. And you need to, it's so important to have that, because especially say you retire or you move on to a different agency, like you're going to lose that eventually, and inevitably a lot of those people are just kind of going to drift off into oblivion.
Yeah. And here's the thing though, like it can be a difficult balance. So I'm thinking about you, and I'm thinking about the relationships that you have. And a majority of the really strong ones are people within the mounted unit, because these are people that you not only see on a day-to-day when you're at work, but then you also see them even more because you guys are doing deployments and different assignments together in that regard. And then there have been many times where I've encouraged you to do like team bonding things that have nothing to do with work. And I think that's great. I think it's very important for you to have a bond that's really tight with your team. A lot of that comes down to the safety element of things when you actually work together. Go ahead. And
it's important to have that. It's great to build your team. It's great to have that connection with your partners, with your fellow peers, and in that instance. And it's important. It is very important to have that. But you also need to create a divide too, because those people aren't always going to be there. Like I'm thinking of, I took on an earlier shift for my day today, and the person who texted me is one of my buddies who we've been friends for many years, kind of work friends. We've done some stuff outside of work, but he texted in like a group message with me and the other sergeants, and then I texted him back a GIF on just between him and I, and it was funny because I know him, and it just made him laugh, because that's kind of the relationship we have. I wouldn't have done that in the group message, but it's just having that kind of difference between us.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I was saying. Like having that kind of personal understanding and relationship with each other is vital. But what I think can happen is that when your only friendships, conversations, your support systems, when all of that only exists within your department, then your personal life can really quickly shrink.
Yeah, and I think of, you have that dynamic, and I think there's a lot of us tell ourselves a story. It's like, well, I have a great relationship in my home life side of things. But then when you really start to break it down, you're like, well, I barely see these people, whether it's family or friends or whoever it may be. And you don't truly know how that relationship's affecting them as individuals, not only including yourself.
There are a lot of ways to be able to kind of self-diagnose whether or not you're falling into this loop. And I think that something we see all of the time is when conversations only revolve around work. So even on your days off, you're talking about calls, you're talking about admin, maybe complaints and things like that. This is going to keep your nervous system in this constant state of being on duty.
I distinctly remember this when I was a young correctional officer working for the state prisons. I had an older guy tell me, he's like, we had a conversation on this. And what he said is, when we're around our partners at work, we're talking about home. But when we're off work and we're having a barbecue or something like that, we're talking about work. And it's so backwards. And it never made any sense, but it makes perfect sense as to it's because there's almost this divide and you don't have that shared interest or that shared way of talking about things when you're together.
Yeah, this happens with a lot of first responders where they struggle to be able to relate to other friends or family who are not in their same field of work. And a lot of the times when that happens, you start to find that you feel bored or frustrated around typical civilians. And this can create emotional distance and even this sense of kind of being misunderstood.
Yeah, you don't want, like, the big excuse I hear all the time is, oh, well, they don't understand my humor and they just don't get me. Well, the relationship works two ways. You have to have an understanding of, like, well, they don't understand when you're talking about eating a hamburger over a dead body that's been there for 5 days. Like, they won't get that because they haven't experienced that. But it's shifting your mindset and saying, well, maybe that's just something I don't talk about with them.
Another thing, too, could be avoiding any kind of non-work social situations, like turning down invitations from neighbors or even your family, old friends, things like that, because your world becomes a lot smaller since you've inadvertently isolated yourself.
Yeah, you don't want to put yourself on an island where all you have is letting the boats of your coworkers come in periodically. You want to get out of your own kind of circle and your normal by incorporating people outside of your normal profession.
And when you see those coworkers that are constantly signing up for overtime, what might be happening is that they could feel super lost when they're off the clock. So without a radio or a roster or calls that are pending, you might feel super untethered. And this really highlights an identity that is overly dependent on your job.
Yeah, and you can definitely see those people who they're so committed to what they're doing and they do great work. And it's not saying that, but you need to have a balance on the back end of saying, okay, well, when I'm at work, but when I'm at home, and you're not having to worry about that. You need to create that stability on your home life just as you do on the work side.
Yeah, and one way that you can do that really easily is to just reignite old friendships or even old hobbies.
Yeah, finding those people that you grew up with, that you've talked with, that you have those friendships with, like going back from high school to, onward other relationships and finding stuff in common to where you can get outside of your norm and challenge yourself. And I think that's the biggest thing that I've heard this numerous times is there's two things that cops hate. They hate change and they hate the situation that they're in, which is absolutely true. And we need to start changing that mindset and get ourselves uncomfortable with being uncomfortable.
Also, you can do things like create new social opportunities that are outside of the job. Things like joining a gym, taking a class, volunteering, something that has nothing to do with law enforcement or being a first responder at all.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. There's, so many activities with churches, with going out and just putting yourself out there outside of, like we talked about the mounted and our team is getting outside of our just normal going out and patrolling and stuff, is going out for a trail ride, doing a trail trial, doing different events with our horses that don't have anything to do with law enforcement.
This is going to sound silly, but I think that sometimes in a situation like this, we can also learn to practice how to have civilian conversations. So things that are topics that are far beyond whatever it is that you just do for work.
In recent times, politics has been one of those things, like, depending on who you're talking with, have political discussions. You don't need to go down like, this is what I believe and you need to believe this with me. Well, talk about, okay, hey, what do you think about this assembly bill that's coming through? Or just having a conversation in relation to find common ground. Hey, you worked out yesterday? Oh, what kind of workout did you do?
Another thing, too, is when you realize that your social circle is not just about you, then you understand the importance of actually building upon that shared social circle. And what I mean by that is involving other people in it. So doing outings and things that allow everybody to kind of build that connection, not just you.
Yeah, having that it's relationships are two-way streets, or multiple, like there's many angles you have to look at with them. You can't just be focused only on yourself. And we've talked about this before. It's not only about you all the time.
I hope you've gotten some value out of today's episode. If you have, do us a favor, drop a review, subscribe down below, and as always, know that I'm sending you a long, tight hug from my home to yours.